So I would like to give a very warm welcome to our first keynote speaker, Preetaman Wadhwa, the Chief Marketing Officer at GATC Health. Preetaman comes with 17 years of global marketing, commercial, strategic lead, and Amgen experience. She has also got an extensive background in pharmaceutical, hospital, and insurance industry. She has experience in therapeutic therapies, including oncology, hematology, immuno-oncology, cardiology, and nephrology. She has focused in patient-centric healthcare and also has a master's in health systems management. And Preetaman, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Good evening and good morning, good afternoon. I see people have joined us from all over the globe. It's an absolute delight for me to be part of Deep Pharma Intelligence Conference today, focusing on AI and drug discovery, biomarker development, and advanced R&D. AI gap in pharma is what I want to focus on today, which should highlight for all of us where we have opportunities to make an impact in the industry as being part of the AI industry. As we think about the pharma and the pharma world, I think today more than ever, the industry is under a lot of pressure. So to generate a new drug today, it takes more time, more cost than ever before. And as we think about these challenges of what pharma is going through when it comes to showing the value, showing the competition, managing the competition, and also being patient-centric, there are significant gaps that exist for us to be very efficient. In that space, the focus is on innovation, and that's where AI fits in. It's the innovation of science and clinical technologies that can help our patients achieve and make a difference in their lives. The AI gap that exists today is the focus of this conversation because the gap is at multidimensional. We see the gap today exists that even though from an AI standpoint, we've made a lot of progress over the last 2 decades, I would say, maybe more, that we've gone from being able to identify some chemical compounds to overlaying physics. But it's really looking at the whole system and the impact of what our drug discovery is going to have on human systems that seems to be lacking. The second dimension I'd like to speak about is what are we offering as being part of the AI industry for drug discovery? Are we offering a component to the overall service plan, or are we offering the end-to-end services? And finally, looking at the productivity. Such a tedious, long, expensive, highly risky process of traditional pharma drug discovery is of the past. AI will revolutionize how this industry evolves and what time and what outputs are provided, because at the end of the day, we have one goal, and that's all of our joint goal is to say, how do we generate better and safer drugs faster? So my name is Preetaman Wadhwa. Thank you, Roxy, for that background overlay. I'm part of the GATC Health team. GATC Health was founded in 2020 as a technology company where we are bringing multiomics data and AI technology to generate drugs faster by creating a human-like environment. Our platform uses data sources from multiple areas, as well as looking at the proprietary AI platform. We are really able to predict upfront the efficacy and safety of drugs in the entire human system, not just the chemistry, not just the physics, and not just in a cell or tissue, but how the human system will respond to that drug across diseases. And that's really the advantage of GATC Health platform, because this has the promise of drastically reducing the cost, the risk, and the time that is taken to develop drugs today. And just as a brief summary, not going too much into our company, but just to highlight, even though there are about 300 AI companies out there, the way we stand out and differentiate is by offering that end-to-end service. We're not only taking the existing database of 90 million compounds and just matching where an affinity is with the target, but our technology starts from identifying and understanding the disease biology, transitioning that to causality with the drug interaction, identifying those drugs that would work, synthesizing them both at a small molecule and biological level. And that is a unique aspect for GATC Health, which can be applied across various therapeutic areas. And the data source, which is a pretty significant issue that we currently are dealing with our industry in AI for drug discovery. We have our own proprietary data because we have a disease detection arm as well, and offer a flexible business model to work with pharma. Let's spend maybe a few minutes just looking at refreshing for all of us where our problems are in the industry. To nobody's surprise, as we can see here, the pharmaceutical research and development process is tedious and long. Today, as we think about what it takes to bring one FDA-approved medicine out, the pharma company could be spending $2.6 billion behind that one drug, whose peak sales is going to be about $500 million on average. This investment is mostly driven by the failure cost of drugs that are being synthesized in the earlier stage, the first 4 to 6 years of drug discovery phase, where thousands, in some cases millions of these compounds are being tested just to find that they don't work. Even within the clinical trial testing, 90% of these clinical trials fail, which have engaged humans and resources at multiple levels, primarily because the efficacy was not there. The safety signals shown in preclinical were not picked up earlier on that came up in the clinical trials phase, as well as the patient selection. It was the wrong patient or the wrong disease that the trial was set in, and the pathway was not well understood. All of this creates risks for the industry, and the risk-benefit profile is not favoring where we need to be in terms of this investment. $200 billion is what we have invested in R&D just in 2020, and fast growing. And do we think any of this is sustainable for our industry? It absolutely is not. And that's where, from an AI standpoint, there is an opportunity. There is an opportunity to help pharma, partner with pharma across all of these different phases of the development process, whether it is discovery and preclinical, looking at precision disease targeting and optimizing the asset, or looking at the clinical trials and every nuance of what is our lead indication, what is our supportive information on the care that's required, the doses, the safety profile, who is the patient ultimately, and validating up there. And also can be expanded in the later stages of commercialization. My experience has mostly been in commercializing drugs across the globe at various stages of the drug development process. And I can give you numerous examples where at each phase of these drug development, there were failures, there were challenges, and that impacted and reshaped our strategy for the industry at multiple times, sometimes completely eliminating therapeutic areas that were legacy for the company. The good news is we've made progress. 4 years ago, in a journal of Biomedical Journal of Scientific and Technical Research, this publication came out to say, where will AI partner with drug discovery in pharma across the initial phase of development? This included, will AI be able to enhance the identification of the targets? AI enhanced engineering of the molecules and creating those 3D images? Will we be able to screen AI-based screening and faster throughput in silico and in vitro? The optimization, including being able to formulate, and formulations are more critical now than ever before, especially with COVID. We've seen a shift of the industry from more frequent and more intensive formulation drugs compared to the more convenient take-at-home oral drugs. And then finally, on the CMC side as well. This is all just thinking about the preclinical phase. And I'm pleased to say that even though our initial, over the last 2 decades, progress was low, the last 4-5 years, especially with COVID in the last couple years, we've seen a dramatic change in what it takes to go through these steps using AI. And COVID is a classic example where some of these studies have been super fast and we've been able to bring drugs out much faster. That set a a threshold, a benchmark for us as an industry across therapeutic areas. And we've also seen in the next slide, as we look at the clinical trials, the clinical trials and how we did clinical trials has changed pretty significantly. There was a time not so long ago, I would say, what was it, 7 years ago, I was working on a drug in melanoma. It was a very sophisticated oncovirus that we were bringing out. And as we did our first launch, we started thinking about which other diseases in oncology exist where we can inject in the tumor, and started our initial evaluations at that time. It took us 7 years to go through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, only to know last year that the trial failed, and hence there was no life cycle management. That's really not how trials are set up now. The adaptive trial design, the master protocols that are looking at the basket trials and the platform approach of these trials is really making an impact, and AI is helping in us to be able to partner with pharma and able to achieve which disease, which platform, which patient should we set up our unique trials in. The question really becomes, is that enough? Have we achieved the goal? And the answer to that is we are just at the beginning phase of this wave that is swelling. We have a long way to go as we think about drug discovery and clinical trials taking 10 years to actually bring that drug out. And by the way, on that 10 years, it doesn't count how many decades it took in the academia world to create or identify those biomarkers. We have not shrunk those 10 years yet for patient. And that's a promise to the patients, is how will we bring these drugs, better drugs, safer drugs, faster to them? So while these a couple years ago, Deloitte produced this platform to say this is how clinical trials should be done intelligently with AI, we have not made enough of an impact to shrink that 10 years down just yet. The proof is yet out there. And once the proof is shown, that is where broadly pharmaceutical industry will be able to take benefit of what we can offer from an AI when we offer them the end-to-end service. And what do I mean by that? From wearing a pharma executive hat on, we are constantly making trade-offs. We are making choices to prioritize therapeutic areas that we will operate in, markets that we will operate in. We are trying to look at, we have one drug in a therapeutic area. For example, I worked in neuro, and there was one compound that we were able to bring out, but there was no pipeline. So looking at how do we expand that pipeline to sustain that entire therapeutic area related organization. Every single day, I open news, you open news, and we hear about failed and shelved drugs. The clinical trial failed, and the drug failed in phase 2 or phase 3. Extremely expensive, very disappointing, and huge loss for patients and pharma. Those failed and shelved drugs, if upfront, were looked at to ensure that they are going to work in that disease in that patient, or can be repurposed now using AI, is a huge value offering that AI industry can bring out. And finally, we look at where innovation is coming from. 70% of innovation in large pharma is coming from smaller companies. They're coming from outside external sources. And even when pharma starts developing products, half of them nearly are in partnership because of the risk. All of this out-licensing, in-licensing, partnership, think about if that can be validated and confirmed prior to making and sealing those deals, because an AI platform was able to tell the pharma company whether that technology, that drug will work. And finally, from a repurposing to ensure upfront, not 7 years later, like I gave you the example in melanoma, But upfront on day one, as we start preparing for melanoma, we are looking at renal cancers, we're looking at head and neck cancers, we're looking at all other types of tumors where we think an injectable oncovirus can really make a difference and help these patients, so that there's a parallel strategy and not a sequential strategy. This is the promise that pharma is seeking from AI companies, and we are equipped and we need to make our technology so sophisticated to deliver on. Because as we think about future, next slide, please. What will be the value of AI market? From one source called Vantage, they say this market is going to be worth 4.2 billion in 2028. I think that's hugely, immensely undervalued. We could be in upward of 20 to 30 billion. We could be upward of 50 billion. We could be upward of 100 billion, because the impact this industry can make on accelerating innovation has not been tapped in fully. And that's the gap, and that's the opportunity. Next slide, please. We've seen mushrooming of AI companies all over the globe, not just US. While there were 240 companies in 2020, there are over 300 companies in 2021 that are focusing on artificial intelligence and its use in drug discovery and partnering with pharma. And interestingly, it's, while US and Canada is holding 2/3 of it, there is a fast growth happening in smaller markets in Asia and other countries that we'll see innovation and partnership there. We've seen partnerships happening in Japan with the local Japanese company. I think this week there was an announcement between Ono and Iptos, where they're going to focus on multiple diseases and pain management as an area for drug discovery. We've seen huge deals happen between Extentia and Sanofi, Merck, and all other large pharma announcing their deals with AI drug discovery. And that is the beginning of what we have to deliver. Because the challenge is, while traditionally we were focusing on looking at filling just a gap of time, our AI gap is multidimensional. We have the preclinical asset identification ability, which is one very specific task. We used machine learning to solve it, and then realized, oops, we don't have the depth of the quality data that is needed. Hence, the AI gap focuses on so much manual work that has been happening. How many potential lead agents are identified? What time it's taking? What cost it's taking? And if that's still the case, we haven't solved the AI opportunity yet, leaving a gap. And to become more tangible about it, just to put it in perspective where we are, where we can go, and we were at a point where it would take us 4 to 6 years to identify, excuse me, 5,000 molecules or so. And sometimes, like I said, it would be millions of assets analyzed by pharma to identify which drug will proceed into clinical trials. When we think about the existing AI companies out there, what they have done is they have shrunk that time to a couple years, and they've optimized that it's not 5,000, it's perhaps 1,000. And in some cases, very recently, we've seen that they've said, okay, we'll have 200 to 300 of those agents identified, which then pharma can evaluate and take it to preclinical testing. GATC Health, for example, because its technology is so unique and is focused on human system versus just the physics and chemistry, is able to do a little bit more. And what they are able to do is identify 1 to 3 compounds in 4 to 6 months, ready for preclinical testing. And that really shrinks the overall time down. And then process of validating the technology across multiple diseases. But as we think about the future, and I'm taking a very big perspective here to say, how will we succeed? How will we deliver our promise for our patients that we are accelerating innovation and bringing better drugs, safer drugs faster for them? This silo approach that we have today of the 300 companies in AI highlighting their technology, their unique platform, their offerings, partnering individually with pharma, and then bringing drugs to the clinical trial That's yet not reaching the efficiency we need in the industry. What we envision is in the future, perhaps there'll be a drug discovery platform that is shared across all the entire industry. There are algorithms that are unique by company, hence focusing on a particular aspect of it. The drug design, the drug synthesis is unique, and hence using that common platform, we are moving forward into clinical trials. So finally, I'd like to end my talk by highlighting where we see this industry going, where I see this industry going. I would love to hear your thoughts as well. I feel there is a huge opportunity we have to bridge the gap between the proof of concept to production. Over the last couple years, we've seen how drugs have progressed from just the identification and fitting to perhaps now the synthesis, perhaps now from small molecule to biologics. But we still have to see a proof where a drug comes to market that was started by AI and that shows upfront what will the drug do in the human system, and then deliver on that through the clinical trials across multiple diseases, across multiple patient types, and show the efficacy and the safety. I also feel that we've talked about patient centricity, but perhaps AI still has the opportunity to bring human centricity and fill that gap by digitizing medical data, and that ensuring that not only the physiological aspect of humans, but also the behavioral, the psychological, the demographic, the uniqueness of patients can be brought in so that that precision medicine idea can be taken to the next level, with also offering open source AI. All of these will help us fill the AI gap that exists. We'll be able to transform the industry, and I really think what was taking 4 to 6 years should not even take 4 to 6 months. It should take 4 to 6 weeks, perhaps 4 to 6 years, 4 to 6 days to identify what is that right medicine for the disease that will ultimately help us deliver our promise to patients to make a difference. And that's what I believe our hope for the future will be. That's the end of my talk. I'd love to hear if there are any comments or questions. Otherwise, back to you, Roxy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Preetaman. That was really informative. I know you have to go quite soon, so we do have a quick question, if that's okay, to ask you, which comes from Grigor Zuzhnowicz. Apologies if I've mispronounced your name. How many assets do you currently have in the pipeline?
So we have 2 active assets and then another 6. We are working at GATC Health in neurological diseases, oncology. We have diabetes, Alzheimer's, and then our pipeline is quite rich. We are just getting additional data with which we'll expand further. And our first drug is ready in the market for partnership this summer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know we've had several comments and questions. If you do actually have any time, then, by all means, you can answer them directly in the Q&A. I know Gregor's came back to ask a question about if you are generating any revenue as yet, particularly. So if you prefer, you're welcome to answer them direct in the chat, because I know that you do have to shoot off quite soon.
Yeah, and then I'm on LinkedIn as well. Please reach out to me and I'm happy to address your questions there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to hearing more from you soon in the future.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much. So everyone, you will be able to get some details about Preetaman if you go into the chat feature right at the bottom of the screen. We did share earlier Preetaman's contact info, including, I believe, her LinkedIn and profile directly relating to her website. I'm sure we would be able to share that again, which is obviously, and also for GATC Health as well, along with their websites. If we can possibly share that again, there you are. Then by all means, you are welcome to get in touch with Preetaman with any questions that you have. I hope you wouldn't mind if people got in touch with you directly on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us.